What if I told you those fish you're marking on your electronics in 30 feet of water aren't the ones you should be fishing for? Today, we're talking about the single biggest mistake anglers make during the pre-spawn. Fishing way too deep for bass that are already moving shallow. I'm going to show you why your instincts and even your expensive gear might be leading you astray, and how a simple shift in thinking can turn a tough day into an epic one. There's a reason the guy with no electronics fish in the bank is out fishing you, and it has nothing to do with luck. Let me ask you this, and be honest. What's the first thing you look for when you hit the lake in early spring? Deep structure? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. The pre-spawn is that magical time of year. We know the big females are feeding up, getting ready. It's our best shot at a personal best. But it's also a time of transition, and that's where the confusion starts. For generations, the conventional wisdom has been to find them on the first major drop-off or staging points near spawning flats. We're taught to look deep. We idle for hours staring at a screen, looking for those classic textbook spots. It makes logical sense, right? The water is still cold, so they must be deep where it's more stable. It's what we've always been told. It's a habit, and fishing is a sport built on habits. But sometimes those old habits are the very things holding us back from finding the fish. Let's start with what I call the deep water trap. You launch the boat, it's a chilly morning, and the first thing you do is fire up your expensive electronics. You start idling over main lake points, creek channel bends, and deep bluff ends. And what do you see? You see arcs. You see what look like fish suspended in 20, 25, even 30 feet of water. Your brain immediately confirms the old rule. They're deep. You spend the next hour meticulously working a jig, a drop shot, or a deep-diving crankbait through that zone. You might even get a bite or two from a lethargic fish, but most of the time, it's a grind. You're convinced you're in the right place because the screen told you so. This is the trap. We put so much faith in what our electronics show us that we forget to question if those are even the right fish to be targeting. They might be bass, but are they the aggressive, feeding bass? That's the million-dollar question we often fail to ask. Now think about what those electronics are really showing you. In cold water, a bass's metabolism is slow. A lot of the fish population will remain in deeper, more stable water because it's comfortable. They aren't expending much energy. They aren't actively hunting. They are, for all intents and purposes, inactive. So when you mark a school of fish sitting in 30 feet of water off a point, you're likely looking at the most lethargic, difficult-to-catch bass in the entire lake. You're essentially trying to force-feed a fish that isn't hungry. It's like trying to sell a steak to someone who just finished a massive dinner. You might succeed if you dangle it in front of their face long enough, but it's a low-percentage game. The real players, the fish that are actively looking to pack on weight for the spawn, have already started to make a move. And they're not moving to 20 feet of water. They're going much, much shallower. The key thing to understand is that not all bass move shallow at the same time. It's not a single mass migration. The pre-spawn movement happens in waves, and the very first wave is often composed of smaller male bass. These are the pioneers. They are the scouts. They push up into the shallows well before the big females even think about it. Their job is to find the best spawning areas, and they get triggered by the slightest environmental cues. While you're out in the middle of the lake marking those deep, inactive fish, these smaller, aggressive males are already cruising the banks in just a few feet of water. They are your first and most important clue. If you start catching a bunch of smaller, 1 to 2 pound males on a shallow bank, don't get discouraged and leave. You've just found ground zero. The big girls are not far behind. You're in the right neighborhood. You just showed up a little early to the party. So what triggers these first movers? It's not just the overall water temperature of the main lake. It's about microclimates and subtle warming trends. The single biggest factor is the sun. Solar energy is a powerful force, a shallow, protected pocket with a dark bottom on the north side of the lake, the side that gets the most direct sunlight all day, can be 5 to 10 degrees warmer than the main lake temperature reading on your console. Think about that. If the main lake is 48 degrees, that shallow pocket could be flirting with the high 50s by mid-afternoon. That's a massive difference to a cold-blooded creature like a bass. It's like a thermal spa for them. It kicks their metabolism into gear and triggers a feeding response. These fish are not looking for deep structure. They are looking for warmth. And the warmest water in the entire lake is often in the top 2 to 3 feet right against the bank. Let's dig deeper into this idea of solar power. It's not just about the water, it's about what the sun heats up. Rock, clay, and wood absorb and radiate heat far better than a mud or sand bottom. Picture a riprap bank or a rocky shoreline. All day long, those rocks are soaking up the sun's rays like a solar panel. In the afternoon, they begin to leach that heat back into the water around them. That creates a narrow band of significantly warmer water right against the bank. A bass can literally press its body against those warm rocks to raise its core temperature. This is why you'll find pre-spawn bass in water so shallow it seems ridiculous. They are physically using these solar-heated objects to their advantage. So when you're looking for spots, stop looking for deep ledges on your map and start looking for heat-absorbing cover on the bank. That's where the active fish will be. Another critical element we often overlook is water clarity. We're taught that clear water is better for fishing, but in the early pre-spawn, a little bit of color can be your best friend. Stained or muddy water absorbs sunlight and heats up much faster than clear water. Think of it like wearing a black shirt on a sunny day versus a white one. The darker water holds more heat in the upper water column. Furthermore, that slight stain gives bass a sense of security. A big female bass feels incredibly vulnerable in 2 feet of crystal clear, 49-degree water. But in 2 feet of water with a little bit of color, she feels concealed. She's more comfortable, more confident, and much more likely to be actively hunting for a meal. So instead of running from dirty water in the spring, you should be running to it. The back of a creek after a warm rain, that's not a write-off, that's a prime opportunity. Let's redefine the word shallow for the pre-spawn period. When many anglers hear shallow, they think of sight fishing for bass on beds in 1 foot of water in late spring. That's not what we're talking about here. In the early pre-spawn, shallow is a relative term. It simply means shallower than you think. It could be 8 feet of water. It could be 5 feet. And on those bright sunny afternoons, it can absolutely be 2 feet or less. The mistake is locking ourselves into a specific depth. The fish aren't holding at a certain number on your depth finder. They are relating to the warmest available water that also offers them some form of cover or ambush point. One day that might be a laydown tree in 6 feet of water. The next day, after 2 sunny afternoons, it might be the shallowest rock on a flat. You have to let the conditions, not the rulebook, tell you how shallow to fish. We need to break the myth that the water is too cold for bass to be shallow. This is one of the most persistent and damaging beliefs in spring fishing. A bass doesn't have a thermometer and a rulebook. It has instinct. Its instinct tells it to follow the food and find comfortable water temperatures. In the spring, both of those things are increasingly found in the shallows. Bait fish like shad and bluegill are drawn to the warmer, shallow water for the same reasons the bass are. It's where the microscopic plankton and algae, the base of the food chain, begin to bloom first. So, the buffet is moving shallow. The bass, especially the big females that need to pack on calories, have no choice but to follow. A 48-degree main lake temperature doesn't mean a bass won't go into 55-degree water that's only 3 feet deep. In fact, it's the exact reason it will. Now, let's talk about a real-life scenario that plays out every single weekend on lakes across the country. You have Angler A. He's got a 21-foot boat with all the latest electronics. He spends the first 2 hours of his day idling, graphing, and marking fish on a classic wintering hole, a deep creek channel bend in 30 feet of water. He's patient, he's methodical. He soaks a jig down there for another hour and finally manages to catch one 2-pounder. He feels like he's on the right track. He just needs them to turn on. He's following the old playbook to a T. He's doing exactly what he's been told to do for years, and he is convinced that he's in the right area, just waiting for the magic to happen. This approach feels right, it feels professional, but as we're about to see, it's often a complete waste of the most productive part of the day. Meanwhile, you have Angler B. He's in a smaller, older boat with a basic graph he barely looks at. The moment he gets on the water, he puts his trolling motor down and starts covering a long, sloping gravel bank on the sunny side of a creek arm. He's not looking at his screen, he's looking at the bank. He's looking for any dark spots, any isolated pieces of wood, or any transition from gravel to rock. He's throwing a shallow running crankbait, maybe a number 5 shad rap or a wigglewort. He's covering water, and he's fishing in a depth range of 3 to 8 feet. Within the first hour, he's already caught 5 or 6 aggressive male bass. He hasn't caught a giant yet, but he's found the action. He's found the zone. He knows he's in the right area because the fish are telling him so, not his electronics. He's following the fish, not the ghosts on the screen. The visual cues you can see with your own 2 eyes are often far more valuable than the digital signals on your graph. Start paying attention to the life on the bank. Do you see baitfish flickering on the surface in a shallow pocket? That's a neon sign that predator fish are nearby. Do you see birds like herons or kingfishers stalking the water's edge? They aren't there by accident. They're there because there's an easy meal to be had in the shallows. Look for subtle things, like a dirty water line where a muddy creek is flowing into the clearer lake. That edge is a natural holding spot for bass. These are the clues that tell you where the most active, catchable fish are located. You can spend an entire day graphing deep water and never get a single one of these real-time, undeniable clues. Turn your head away from the screen and look at the world around you. It's telling you a story. Wind is another factor that fishermen, especially those fixated on deep water, often get wrong in the spring. The old saying is, the wind is your friend, but we have to understand why. A warm spring wind blowing into a shallow bank or pocket for a few hours does something amazing. It pushes the warmer surface water and stacks it up on that bank. This can create a thermal cline, a layer of warmer water that's several degrees hotter than the surrounding area. It also stirs up sediment, providing cover, and activates the baitfish. That wind-blown point or bank becomes a 5-star restaurant for bass. While the calm, protected deep spots seem more comfortable to us, the choppy, wind-swept shallows are where the feeding frenzy is happening. Don't run from the wind. Follow it to the shallow, sun-exposed banks, and you will almost always find the most aggressive fish in the lake. This shallow water strategy requires a major adjustment in your lure selection. It's time to put away the heavy football jigs, the spoons, and the deep-diving crankbaits. Your arsenal needs to be focused on baits that excel in the 0 to 10-foot depth zone and can be used to cover water efficiently. You are no longer trying to pick apart a small, specific spot. You are hunting. You are searching for needles in a haystack. This means your primary tools should be baits like shallow to medium-running crankbaits, especially those with a tight wobble in cold water. Lipless crankbaits are phenomenal for covering shallow flats. And of course, the jerkbait is a king in this scenario, allowing you to suspend a tempting meal right in the strike zone. Think efficiency. Think horizontal, not vertical. You need to put your bait in front of as many fish as possible to find the biters. Let's focus on the crankbait for a moment. A small balsa crankbait or a flat-sided crankbait is deadly in this situation. Why? because you can fish it incredibly slowly and still maintain its action. You can crawl it over shallow rocks and stumps, deflecting it off cover, which triggers reaction strikes. A square-bill crankbait is perfect for targeting laydowns and brush in that 2 to 5 foot range. The key is to make contact with the bottom or the cover. Every time that lure bumps into a rock or a log and changes direction, it looks like a vulnerable fleeing crawfish or baitfish. That's a dinner bell for a pre-spawn base. You're not just casting and retrieving, you're feeling your way through their living room. You can't do that effectively from 30 feet of water. You have to get shallow and get your hands dirty. Then there's the suspending jerkbait. This might be the single most effective tool for tricking a big, wary pre-spawn female that has moved shallow but isn't quite ready to chase down a fast-moving bait. The magic of the jerkbait is the pause. You can work it down to its running depth, maybe 6 or 7 feet, and then just let it sit there. It suspends perfectly in the water column, quivering slightly. A big, curious bass will swim right up to it and stare it down. She might not hit it if it's moving, but she can't resist it when it's just hanging there, helpless. The jerk, pause cadence is legendary for a reason. That long pause, sometimes 10 seconds or more in very cold water, is what drives them crazy. It's an easy meal that requires almost no energy to capture, and that's exactly what a pre-spawn bass is looking for. Another killer bait for this shallow water approach is the bladed jig, or the chatterbait. This lure combines the vibration of a crankbait with the profile of a jig. It's incredibly versatile. You can fish it just under the surface, or you can slow roll it along the bottom in 5 to 8 feet of water. It comes through sparse cover like wood and rock very well. That constant thumping vibration calls fish from a distance, which is perfect for searching large, shallow flats. It's a great tool for when the water has a bit of stain to it. The fish may not be able to see very far, but they can feel that vibration in their lateral line and will come to investigate. It allows you to fish both faster to cover water and slower to pick apart specific targets, making it a must-have for this style of fishing. Let's go back to our 2 anglers. By midday, Angler A, the deep water specialist, has given up on his primary spot. He's now idling around, looking for another deep school, burning precious fishing time. He's frustrated and starting to blame the weather or a tough bite. He's caught maybe one more small fish. His confidence is shot. He's stuck in the mindset that the fish should be deep, so he refuses to adapt his strategy. He might even pack it in early, calling it a bad day. He did everything the old books told him to do, but the fish didn't read those books. He's being outsmarted not by the fish, but by his own stubborn adherence to an outdated pattern that simply isn't in play on this particular day. Now let's check back in with Angler B. After catching those initial smaller males, he didn't leave the area. Instead, he slowed down. He recognized he was in the right zone. He switched from his crankbait to a suspending jerkbait. He started making precise casts to isolated pieces of cover. A small rock pile, a single stump, a shadow line. He's working the bait with long pauses. On his third cast to a small laydown in 4 feet of water, his line goes tight. He sets the hook and the water explodes. It's a 5-pound female. She wasn't out deep with the others. She had pulled up to that warmer, shallow cover to feed. Angler B found her not because of his electronics, but because he followed the clues the smaller fish gave him and understood the power of sunshine on a shallow bank. This isn't a fluke. This scenario repeats itself constantly. The progression is almost always the same. The first warming trend pushes bait and smaller male base shallow. The bigger female stage just outside this activity, maybe in 8 to 12 feet of water, waiting for the conditions to be perfect. They make short forays into the super shallows to feed, especially during the warmest part of the day, from noon to about 4 in the afternoon. If you spend your entire day fishing in 20+ feet of water, you are completely missing the entire window of feeding activity. You're fishing in the past, where the fish were a week ago, not where they are right now, at this very moment. The name of the game is interception. You want to be in their path as they move up to eat. So the next time you go out during the pre-spawn, I challenge you to try something different. Spend the first hour of your day with the big motor off and the trolling motor down. Leave the deep water alone. Pick a sunny bank. Grab a bait that runs 10 feet or less and just go fishing. Cover water. Pay attention to your surroundings. Trust your eyes more than your screen. You might be shocked to find that the fish you've been looking for have been right under your nose the whole time. It's a change in mindset from waiting for the fish to come to you out deep to going and finding them where they want to eat. It's proactive, not reactive. And I promise you, it will lead to some of the most memorable spring fishing days you've ever had. So what's the bottom line? We've been programmed to trust our electronics and old-school wisdom that tells us pre-spawn bass are deep. We've talked about how the sun, the wind, and the first wave of fish completely changed that game. We've seen how focusing on what you can see with your eyes on the bank is often more important than what you see on your screen in 25 feet of water. The real aha moment, the big twist, is this. The fish you're marking deep might be bass, but they're likely the inactive, lethargic ones. The aggressive, feeding fish, the ones you actually want to catch, have already made the move. You're not fishing for the main population, you're fishing for the feeding population. And in the pre-spawn, they are almost always shallower than you think. This isn't just a small tip. It's a fundamental shift in strategy. It means less time idling and more time casting. It means trusting your observations over your sonar. It means you can have incredible days in the early spring while everyone else is still dragging a jig out deep, waiting for a bite that may never come. Thank you so much for watching. If this video opened your eyes or gave you a new strategy to try, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on more tips that challenge the way we think about fishing. And now I really want to know, after watching this, are you going to spend more time with your trolling motor on high, covering shallow banks this spring? Let me know your new game plan in the comments below. Let's talk about it.